So this is the talk on Kickstarter. How many of you have heard of Kickstarter for crowdsourced funding? Yes. How many of you have thought about doing a Kickstarter or some kind of crowd? Yeah. How many of you have actually done one? Oh, actually, quite a few. Yeah, I know you guys did. Did you? How many of you personally run one? 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So those of you that thought about it but haven't done it, why haven't you done it? Let's hear a couple reasons. Anyone? I saw some hands go up.
Good excuse. You said it's not.
Go ahead.
Because I don't want to fail.
You don't want to fail?
Yep.
That's a good reason. Yeah.
But as of this morning,
Anyone else? You guys? Why haven't you done one?
One reason is just that I don't have a portfolio to give confidence to people who are back.
Oh, so you're afraid that you might not have like the credibility to put it out there? Backers? Alright.
I figured it would take a lot of time, and I didn't figure I'd have enough time to actually invest in it.
Right. Yeah. It takes the most time if it succeeds.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. Were you going to say something, Gavin?
Or just time, and especially if it succeeds.
Time, right, yeah. So if you're a failure, not sure if you're credible enough. I mean, I think some of it too is just, it seems like a big thing to tackle, right?
Yeah.
But now you can just do something stupid and make money, right? Have you guys seen this?
Yes.
That's real. And actually the reason for that is I went back and thought, how did this happen? Is that Kickstarter about a month ago, they changed all their rules.
yes, they did.
They basically threw out all the rules and sold out so that they could make more money.
Yeah.
Um,
In all fairness, though, Indiegogo is starting to kick us out a little bit. They have the rules.
Indiegogo is nothing.
Count.
No, Indiegogo, if you...
Bruce McKeith and Will Wheaton would argue that's part of it.
For certain things,
Yeah.
one platform is better than the other. We'll talk about it a little. So yeah, the potato salad. The guy said he was going to make potato salad, and now he's got potentially $50,000, but you can always pull out of funding. Okay, so what is crowdsourced funding? Okay, wait. Before I start, I will give my little story about who I am and why I'm talking about Kickstarter. So my name is Nat Iwata, and I've been working in the game industry. I've met a lot of you already. For about 7 years, doing everything from being the sole artist on a game, where I do like everything from concept art to animation and UI and even sound and music back in the old days, to doing just art direction or just like pieces of games. I've worked on a lot of games. I don't know how many anymore, because I don't count anymore. But somewhere probably like 3 dozen maybe. Like my fans, and I have dozens. I've made dozens. And then about 2 years ago, I became a freelance artist, and I started doing Kickstarter. I did my first one. Kickstarter was still pretty young, and I heard about it, and I thought, well, I had a decision to make. I could either just get a job at another studio and try that whole route, or I could just jump in with full-time freelance and get contract work, or I could try to do something different and take a risk. And like a couple of you said, failure is always an option when you do this. And Kickstarter, it's a very public failure, right? You tell everyone you know about it. Come watch me fail. I mean, it's like Jeff's video. Right? It's like, if you're going to do it, it's not a very private thing. So it was a little scary. So I launched my first Kickstarter a little over 2 years ago on my birthday, which was a decision so that I could take advantage of my birthday and say, hey, back my thing, or at least check it out. In not so much of an obnoxious way, because people were already talking to me on my birthday on Facebook and all that. So crowdsourced funding, most of you know what it is. Practice of funding, project or venture, raising small amounts of money from a large number of people, usually via the internet. I don't know how else you do it. So some benefits of doing crowdsourced funding is if you have a project or game you want to fund, you don't have a ton of options. You have a few options. One is just do it yourself and fund it yourself, which is a lot of your time and a lot of your money, and a lot of us have to eat and all that stuff. You could try to find like an investor, an angel investor or something. That can be hard, as like Code Monkeys knows and stuff, because they're looking for a monetary return on their investment. They're not just wanting you to make a cool product. They're wanting you to show it's how it's going to make them more money. And also, a lot of times they have like some kind of controlling stake. Not always, but sometimes. And so you lose some creative control. Crowdsource funding allows you to put a project out into the interweb and in front of a lot of people. And if people like it and they believe in you and they think it's a cool product, game, whatever it is, then they can help make it before you have funds to do so, which is pretty awesome. I've done, my first one was this book, Steampunk Alphabet, and it was a really good experience. It raised over its funding amount, and then a publisher called me and wanted to publish it, so that was a really cool thing too. It was a very non-traditional way of getting a book published, was going through Kickstarter, because a lot of people end up seeing your stuff on Kickstarter. It's got all the backers' names in the back, so all the people that help. So you do stuff like that. And then I've been doing, I haven't done a video game on here. I've done parts of video games. I've done these illustrated card decks. There's like Steampunk Bicycle, Pirates, and there was an Orc one. I did one for the Goonies movie recently with a publisher. And so that's kind of a niche I found because it's a great vehicle for my art to be able to put on a bunch of cards. So I have these. Does anyone want one? Yeah. Okay. I'm blindly throwing them out. Alright, here you go. You're damn. Oh, that's all of them. Okay. Sorry, I used them all up at once. You don't get rewards for good answers. So the first thing I think is choosing your platform. We were joking around about Indiegogo. I did a little experiment before I came. I put my last project up, which was, let's see, here's all the projects I've done. It was this one on Kickstarter, which funded a couple days ago. There's me talking. And see, it raised $28,000. And the first day, I think it raised like $7,000 or something like that. And I put the same project up on Indiegogo. Look how it's doing. Really good.
Well, have you ever had a project on Indiegogo before?
No, I haven't. But to be fair about that, my first project that went on Kickstarter I'd never had, and the first day it raised like $500 right away. So
Gotcha, okay.
it depends on what you're looking at. So for Indiegogo, there's Indiegogo, there's GoFundMe, which allows you to do more like charity or raise money for you have a medical problem or something like that. But you got to choose a platform that fits your needs. Indiegogo, I think, there's a lot more people doing comics and stuff on there too. But for example, when I started looking at doing cards, I wanted to see what the market was like on Indiegogo, so I did card search. See, there's fun. Look at that. It's right there with 0. So you start to look at it, you're like 191, 20 euro, 0, 0, 0, 0, 84, 1800, and you know, I'm not seeing a lot of. I mean, this one I know because it's on Kickstarter right now too. It's raised about $15,000 or $16,000. So there's not a lot in the card, especially in the cards. There weren't a lot. And then if you do the exact same search on Kickstarter now, you can see there's much more of a demographic for cards. I mean, specifically for cards. Other things it'll be different, but in here you're seeing like, oh, it's 40,000, 16,000, 16,000. You know, even the lower ones are more than the higher ones who are on Indiegogo. So you want to look at a platform that best suits and do some research. What best suits your product or your game or whatever the case is. Kickstarter. I use Kickstarter. I think it's got very strong branding. It's also got the highest site ranking, I believe, right now. And they've done a lot to build a community around Kickstarter. They have film festivals. There's a lot of outlets. When I was in New York visiting my sister, I met one of the couple of the managers there, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go to lunch." I mean, they're really open to listening to their community and building that sense of community. So I endorse Kickstarter. They've been great. Choosing your product. I think that it's important when you look at where you're going to fund. Like, not only is the product cool to you, is your game cool to you, but is it going to be cool to other people? Does it have things that are going to appeal and people are going to want to, pitch in and fund? So what's the appeal? Who's the audience? Who are you trying to get? Like I said, if you're trying to go after the card collecting community, you're probably not going to go to Indiegogo. And then also, who else is doing it? a lot of projects that are kind of repeats on Kickstarter. Like, have you seen the slim wallets? There's like a zillion of those. My sister did one. But you know, what's going to make your product unique? And then really ask realistically, like not just do I want to make this game or do I want the money? The answer is yes, I'm sure to both those questions. But can you deliver it? Is it realistic? And then who cares is actually, and what I mean by that is you have to think of it to some degree, like people, like you said, you don't know if you have the credibility for people to back your product and see that you're gonna deliver it. Well, by asking who cares, you can kind of whittle down like who will care, who can I contact, who will help me push this product, push the project, who's going to write about it on their blog, who's going to feature it on their site, that kind of thing. My first project, I had a choice. There's me with my shit. This was actually the very first Kickstarter that I never launched. Let's see.
Was it a practice, or are you going to launch and you decided?
I was going to launch this. This is was a kid's book. It was just a pretty kid's book about imagining and pretending to be different things and stuff. So I really liked this. And then at the same time as this, I had the idea for the steampunk alphabet. And I thought, no one's done this? And I looked at it. No one's written a steampunk alphabet. Steampunk was kind of a growing trend at that time. I'm not sure where it stands today necessarily, but I had a decision to make, like which book should I try? And in looking at Kickstarter and seeing that other steampunk projects were really well received, and then looking at who will care about this, it's harder to get a general kids book noticed because there's not as many areas to pitch it to. And with the steampunk kids book, which still I was passionate about, I love doing the art. That's what this one was. It gave me a place where I said, oh, there's all these different sites that cater to steampunk. Nerd Approved does stuff. A lot of the geek sites it ties in with gaming. I can have people I can at least say, hey, check this out. And that proved to be a pretty good decision. You know, so there is some thought or business or marketing that goes into decisions I make on Kickstarter. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather get one of the books made and be able to illustrate and publish and everything than to have nothing done because I didn't really take time to think about what might actually have a better chance of succeeding. So, so just think about all those things as you're getting ready to do your project. Okay, so planning. I think planning is a big deal. It's relatively easy to start a Kickstarter page and launch it without doing any planning. But if you do that, you can really shoot yourself in the foot. There's a lot of people, I think, that launch Kickstarters first time and they don't plan for all the expenses that are going to be associated with that, the cost of labor and the time it's going to take. And even if you're making a game, which isn't a product you have to have made per se, there's going to be expenses with the other rewards you offer, like, oh, we're going to do t-shirts and we're going to do signed posters for people of our game and we're going to, all that stuff, well, that all costs money. And even getting overfunded, that overfunding amount isn't just extra money because every pledge that someone makes has a cost associated with it, with the rewards that you have to deliver, and the shipping you have to pay, and the handling you have to pay for someone to box that in if you don't do it yourself. I make, for my first couple especially, I made really detailed spreadsheets. This looks maybe intimidating or boring,
That's
but
artistic.
But it's what?
It's artistic.
It's artistic. So I had my pledges, like I had here's a $10 pledge. My reward cost for that was $2.81. I knew that shipping would be about $1.36 based on the weight. That would leave $5.83 profit in that reward. And then as I went through the campaign, I filled in how many units had sold or been pledged for, and what the total pledge amount was. And then I broke all that down basically by which products were being taken. And then at the end I could say, okay, when all's said and done, Kickstarter takes 5% off the top. So if you have a $10,000 campaign, Kickstarter will take 5, Amazon will take 5, and you immediately lose $1,000. So it's kind of a big deal if you're only raising $10,000 for a project. So you have to figure that in. So this just let me figure in, Kickstarter, they take their fee, reward costs, shipping costs, setup fees, what's left out of $45,000 was like $12,000. So, and it didn't actually end up being that much because the shipping and handling cost way more than I thought it was going to.
Did you do this all yourself? As in like, when it got funded, then you reached out to all the backers yourself and gave them their rewards and stuff, or did you have help from other people?
I didn't do it all myself. I'll get to that. But I did for this one. For the book, it was like 250 backers. And that was terrible. Never go stand in line at the post office with 250 not marked packages and expect them to weigh every single one and print out postage for you. That was real dumb. We got a lot of real very dirty looks. My wife and I were like huddled in the corner trying to get all the stamps that they'd given us on. And it took like hours and no, I would never get on that. Though if it's smaller like that and you plan better and you go like stamps.com and you print out labels or something, it would go much, much smoother than how I tried to do it, which was not great. But by doing that, making that spreadsheet first, it really allowed me to say, okay, where am I going to be at if it funds? Where am I going to be at if it overfunds? And it let me set a realistic threshold because, say, for the card deck, $18,000 sounds like a lot, like to make a card deck. And I saw people doing it for less, and when I really ran all the numbers, if it funds at $18,000 because the card printer I work with requires you to order 2,500 card decks at a time, and each one costing anywhere from like $3 to $7, plus all their fees and stuff, and then shipping at $18,000, I basically make no money at all left over. Like just is enough to get everyone their stuff. So by knowing kind of where I stand, it really helped me go into it a lot more confident. So that's something I really encourage you to do. Find out your vendors or anyone, if you're going to get t-shirts, where are you going to get them? Don't just say we're going to get t-shirts. Where are you going to get them? How much is it going to cost? How much is shipping going to cost? All that stuff. And then get ETAs and schedules from like those different people.
So how long does it take to set up the campaign?
The campaign? It depends. I mean, I usually take a couple weeks to really like get it set up and then make sure I look at it and go over it. You can do it faster if you want to, but when your first time you do a Kickstarter campaign, you have to verify your bank account so that you can get money, and that can take a few days for all that to transpire. And then there used to be an approval process at Kickstarter, which could take, my sister, it took 2 weeks to get hers. Which was so funny to me. They went from kind of one extreme to the other. They were so meticulous before, like, well, you need to change this wording in the fact, or you need to explain more about your manufacturers, or before you launch your product. And now it's just, there's no approval process. So they used to be very picky because they wanted to make sure you were going to be able to deliver what you said you were going to deliver.
What about taxes?
Taxes you want to figure in, like, I don't want to share all my income from last year, but my gross income from all my Kickstarter and stuff was like $100 and some thousand, and my taxable income was very small compared to that because I had so many costs. So you only pay taxes, basically you got to figure your taxes on what's on your profit. That's going to count as income. Everything else is business write-off, so you're not going to pay taxes on that. But you do want to be careful. I did the last one I did in last year, which was like $45,000. It was at the end of the year, so I hadn't paid out anything or delivered rewards or had any write-offs yet. And so I was able to work with an accountant where they basically took that and delayed it into this year, so that I didn't have to pay taxes on. Because that would have been good. If that all counted as income, with a very small percentage.
What about sales tax? Does Amazon handle it as sales tax, or does that apply?
Sales tax you have to figure in for whatever state you live in. So for me, I live in Washington. I have to give the IRS a spreadsheet of all my, or my accountant a spreadsheet of all my Washington backers and the different tax amounts associated with all the different places they live. But I only have to pay sales tax for Washington residents. All right, make your page look good. I think it's important, like you're saying, credibility. There's a lot of people on Kickstarter that have never done a card deck or a game before, but if people see it and it looks good, if the product looks good, if the game looks good and enticing, I mean, then usually and you have some people to help you kind of boost it in the beginning, you can get funding for it, or at least get that going. So, but I think part of that is getting a decent looking video and page. Like, so for mine, I try to always put kind of details into the headers. I want it to look professional. I lay stuff out nicely. When I do my add-ons, like an add-on sheet, I actually do a graphic for it, so people can see clearly what they're going to get, what they can choose from.
Do you actually work with bicycle friendlies or?
Bicycle is just a license. You can buy, anyone can buy a license. Really anyone now. With Kickstarter now, they just license anybody. They used to be more picky too, about what they put their label on, and now if you'll pay the fee, then basically you're good. Yeah, as long as there's no legal problems or anything. So yeah, just having the page look good. The videos don't have to be like professional quality or anything. I think as long as you know what you're shooting for. So like, well, I guess I have some audio.
Hey, Kickstarter.
Okay.
I'm Nat Iwata.
So mine, okay, it's not gonna play very well. Mine are not very high quality, but they're kind of funny, and I jump cut everything. It's just me being a dork, but it gets the point across, and it's pretty well received. I'm not trying to do like a super high-end thing. I thought this was funny. Take that in for a minute. That was unsuccessful. That was the irony. So I was going to show at the beginning and say there's no magic formula. I'm not saying I could make yours succeed, but I thought this was very ironic when I saw this. Talk about public failure, that would suck. So aside from the page looking cool, I think your icon. This okay, stuck on me looking like that. When someone browses through all the available products and projects that they could be throwing their money at, they see these little images. And just like, I mean, Chris, you'd know right from the App Store, it's like you want that to stand out, to look good. Because people do make a judgment just based on that little picture. Just like when you're searching through the App Store on the iPhone, you're like, oh, that icon looks really crappy. It probably didn't do a very good job of PR or whatever the case is. Where things just catch your eye. So I always experiment with my little icon picture. I change it throughout the campaign to see kind of how it affects things. But you want it to look good. You want it to look eye-catching, all that stuff. So just put thought into those things, I guess, is the point. And then your rewards, you want them to make sense. You want them to be easy to read. A lot of times, I think where people get in trouble is especially early in Kickstarter, this was common. You'd be like, with this reward, you get a T-shirt. With this reward, you get a T-shirt and a water bottle. With this reward, you get all those things, plus, and it was all cumulative. And so by like the end of the last reward, you're getting like 50 things. And, that's expensive, and it's a lot to keep writing. And the first time you go back and checking, like, well, what do I get with this one? I get all this, I got to read all these. Keeping it more concise, and I've always kind of done that, is each reward is just its own reward. That helps. Though there is something called add-ons. If any of you have done Kickstarters, you can put add-ons where, like, someone pledges for a deck of cards. If you want to add a second deck of cards, add $10 to your campaign, and then there's something called a pledge management system. We'll talk about that later. That you can use to get, which is good because it lets people choose their rewards and it lets you keep getting more orders. Okay. Any questions so far? You good? Okay. Pre-launch activity. I think this is really important, especially if you've never done one before, is that you do some legwork before you launch your Kickstarter campaign. One of the biggest, I think, piece of advice I could give would be to reach out to other creators on Kickstarter. You can message people, but also to back other projects, because when you start a campaign, people can see if you backed any projects. They can see which and how many. They can't see what you pledged, but they can see what you have, and they can see that if you're invested kind of in other people, and you're doing the same that you're asking people to do for you. But especially Kickstarter has built a really good community of people helping each other. The company I did the Goonies card deck with, that whole relationship started with just me asking them questions because they'd done a couple decks before me, and I wanted to know how they do this. And they were just really helpful. They just shared information, and And I've tried to do the same for anyone that contacts me on Kickstarter. I try to share knowledge and information and help them out and give them guidance if I can. So that will go a long way if you reach out to people. I think you'll find people are pretty receptive. Setting a launch date is good, and if you tell people about it, then they have they know when your project's going to show up. Your first one, like my book, was like a lot of friends and family, that first one, because they're like, oh, you're doing something on your own, that's great. And you haven't built up a big audience yet, so you do get a little boost from friends and family, I think, especially in your very first one. And that'll do a couple things. One, it'll hopefully get you a little along the way to getting funded. The other thing it does is it can boost you in the ranking on the crowdfunding site that shows like projects filtered by popularity. Well, if in the first day you get a decent amount of pledges, it'll boost you up where people can see your project better then. It won't just be in the new project section, it'll also be in the popular section, which is great. It's kind of got some parallels with like the App Store. If you guys, I don't know, many of you have made games for the App Store, but that's a reference that I use a lot. Early backer and limited edition rewards. So that's something you can offer that's special to people that do show up the first day. Something I've always done on my card decks is normally they're at $10 or $11. Well, I'll set like a $5 or $6 reward, and you can limit the amount and say, I only want 50 of these to go, and then it cuts it off. And then I'll tell people, my product's going to launch on this day, there's going to be 50 card decks for $5. So it gives people an incentive to like be there and be pledging and trying to get those rewards. Something I did that I don't think anyone else had done, but a lot of people I've seen have done since, is I do like a $1 reward that's got like $50 worth of stuff in it. And I just set that on the first day, and so people are like jumping on the project to try and get that one reward. But you can't do raffles or coupons, but Kickstarter does apparently allow that, which it's just been kind of fun. You get people complain about it if they don't get it, but it's kind of a marketing strategy to some degree. And limited edition rewards, like things that say you can only get this on Kickstarter, or we're only doing like for your game or whatever, you're like, 100 people will get this special item, or 100 people will get a signed photo of the team, or whatever the case is. It's something that is limited, and once it's gone, it's gone. And for some reason, people they'll pay more for that just because of the fact that only a few people are going to get it. You're kind of creating your own demand with rewards like that. And then also research blogs, sites, like I was saying before, that you can contact, usually after it's launched, because you contacted them that day before it's launched, that, hey, I'm going to be launching this, they'll forget about you. And a lot of I've been featured on a few sites that are bigger, geek sites, and it's usually like the same day, like I'll send them an email, hey, check out my project, and then like an hour later they put it up, because they're just like, oh, I have nothing else to put up right now, or whatever, and then they put my project up. So it kind of behooves you to wait till it's live to really contact those people, but to make a list and know who you're going to contact. The shiny green button, launching your project, I'd say have a party, whatever, invite people over, or just tell people about it. Try not to be too like vaguey or obnoxious about launching your product, but people want to know, they care about you, they like your stuff, whatever the case is. They want to know, and it's great to get it out there and let people know. The first few days, it'll be, that's when you get like the most backing is usually in like the first week, and then it like dies down. So you just have to be ready for that. I think my first project I had an email notification set to every pledge I got. And the first two I had, the first one wasn't as crazy. The second one went a little bit faster, and so I was getting like all these emails, and it just felt very chaotic. After that, I turned it off because that's just overkill. But just be prepared for that. Hopefully, you'll have some chaos in the beginning because it means the project's people with funding it. Creative marketing. I think a good question to ask is, would you help you? And what I mean by that is that I get a lot of emails during campaigns from people who are just starting out. And if they email me and they say a specific question like, hey, can you give me some advice on this? What did you use for this vendor? Blah, blah, blah. I'll give them feedback. But if they just email me and say, can you promote my product to your backers? I don't really have any incentive to do that. And I can't do that for every single person's thing. And it's kind of bad manners, right? If someone just sends you an email and says, hey, can you share my cool, you don't know them at all, I'm just kind of hearing about it. Can you share this on your Facebook page? It would really help me out. but you don't know them, you don't know what their product is, you're not going to probably do it because what's it offering to you to some degree? Don't beg. People can smell desperation and it doesn't smell good. Piggybacking on other people's, not in a bad way. What I mean is any creator that you collaborate with or other game developer has their own audience, has their own fans, has their own followers. And if you can collaborate with something on them, they're going to naturally want to share it with their group of people. An example of that was...
Is that kick it forward?
What?
Kick it forward type stuff?
What is it?
Kick it forward?
Kick It Forward? I don't know, is that a site?
No, I've seen it quite a few times. People who are starting or in the middle of their campaign, they start mentioning others who are on.
Oh, yes, yeah, cross-promoting basically. Yeah, that's one thing that I always do is I have a section called Other Awesome Projects on my updates I send out, and I will collaborate throughout the campaign with other creators, and they'll say, hey, if you promote mine, I'll promote yours. And so you coordinate to promote each other's products, and which is great, because there's some crossover, but I've definitely gotten a lot of pledges from people that saw it coming from someone that they know and trust, and then they'll back my project too. One just kind of example of me trying to offer something of value. Oh, shoot. There it is. Go. Okay. To both kind of piggybacking on other people's audiences and their fans, and then also creating value, offering something of value to people, was when I did the pirate card deck. I basically contacted authors and comic book artists that were well known or had decent sized followings in kind of the steampunk community and that kind of thing. And I asked them if I could do a portrait of them on one of the cards. So I didn't have to ask them to share it with your fans, and it wasn't conditional. It wasn't like, hey, if I do a portrait of you, will you share this with your fans? I knew if I did a cool portrait of them, they'd share it with their fans. Because, who wouldn't? These are people who are trying to be self-promotional to some degree too. They're artists, they're authors. And so I did these. I don't know if you guys know Girl Genius. It's a comic, web comic. They've got they did a Kickstarter campaign and raised like $300,000. They've got a real decent following. But Phil and Kaja, I had them both in the card deck. They call it Text is Dead. This guy, G.D. Falkson, he's an author, and it just so happened by contacting him. His publicist is Evelyn, who has a Facebook page with 500,000 followers on it. It's like the steampunk page, which that just was a happy coincidence that those two were tied. But anyways, the point is that they all shared it with all of their fans because I put them on a card. And so I didn't have to be desperate, I didn't have to beg, and I gave them something in return. It wasn't just me saying, hey, can you push my project? Because she gets, I've gotten to know her pretty well, and she gets just tons of emails every day from people saying, can you post my stuff? Can you post my stuff? And usually she just ignores them because she just gets too many. But with mine, she actually wrote me back right away. Hey, great, yeah, this would be awesome. She was great. And she was like, I'm the publicist for that guy with the robotic arm. So I'll push all your stuff to my 500,000 fans too. Cool. So then the cross-promoting, what you guys were talking about, that is an awesome thing to do. And I really encourage you to do that if you're running a campaign. Mid-campaign, this is kind of the typical curve of a Kickstarter campaign. You get a lot of hype in the beginning, it's exciting, and then you're getting a few pledges a day, and it feels like everyone's abandoned you, and it's depressing. But you have to know this almost always happens. I've had a couple where it didn't, but that's the normal. And then at the end, people go, oh, this is going to end. Because you can set 48-hour reminders on projects that you're just kind of interested in and want to see where they go. Those kick in the last couple days, and then you get a bigger boost at the end. So that's the very typical curve. Mid-campaign, I try to think of campaigns when I'm running them. I'm always trying to do little things to give them little boosts along the way. Like the car's running out of gas or something, and you're trying to just keep it going. And so I'll do things like I'll release content, like the cards say. I'll release new illustrations every 3 days to give people a reason to stay engaged and to comment and to look at it. Also blogs and sites, you might want to plan those out throughout your project so that it keeps coming in some interest. And don't get discouraged. Slump almost always happens. And Kickstarter is not broke, and neither is your browser. It is refreshing, you're just not getting money. Towards the end of the campaign, well, hopefully, if it goes well, people will ask for stretch goals, meaning you've hit your funding mark early, and now they're saying, like, well, what's next? What can you offer? So some examples of that could be, so for this one, which is a guy I work with, the Dear God, Crescent Moon Games, they made a ton of iPhone games and stuff, but this was Josh's first Kickstarter campaign. In the beginning, it did not do very well. And then Kickstarter featured it on the main page. So it went from like $17,000 to like 50 in like a week. So that doesn't usually happen, but I was really glad for him because it's a beautiful looking game. But what he's done is, so for some of his stretch goals, he did things like, I'm going to offer it on a new platform. Like if we get to this stretch goal, it'll be on 3DS. If we get to this, stretch goal, it'll be here and here. And so he gave people an incentive to keep pledging, keep sharing it, and it's really a great looking game, and he did a great job of keeping people engaged. But look at projects like this for video games, because you can see where there are rewards, early alpha builds, soundtracks, art books. There are a lot of things you can do and offer for a game. And the good news about games too is sometimes there's not as much physical overhead and things you have to ship, which is great. It can be a digital download or something because it definitely saves on cost. Encourage people to share the project. I always say, like on my videos and stuff, even if you can't back it financially, if you think it's cool, then share it, because that helps. And a lot of times you'll find people back your project and then not share it. It's like, you cared enough to give me $50, but you won't hit the share button. And so you can nicely say, like, hey, you loved it, you liked enough to back it, please share it. But don't, again, try not to whine. Sometimes I get people like begging, guys, you have to share it, you have to do this. It's like, oh my gosh, I give you my money, leave me alone. And then if at first you don't succeed, you can relaunch. So if a project doesn't go through, you can, go ahead.
You finish your same one.
I was just going to say, if your project doesn't succeed, that's okay. I mean, because failure can sometimes be good if it's going to help improve your product. Have you guys seen that cooler?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh. Okay, let me show you this. He's local. He's a local guy. The lady that owns my shipping company is friends with him. You see this 7 million?
Oh,
Yeah. Well, this
It breaks the
will,
record now since it's officially the most funded.
I think it is the most funded.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
gonna
I
be
see
this
that.
like
For a
double
cooler?
green. This killed the green rainbows.
I got one of those. I didn't know you broke the record.
But he's a local guy. He's an inventor. He's been inventing for years and stuff. But I think the really awesome part about this is he launched this and failed. Here, let me show it real quick. The coolest cooler, Portland, Oregon. Here it is.
2013.
He did not hit his goal of $125,000.
Wow.
And I think this is a great testament to the fact that if your project doesn't succeed, doesn't mean it's bad. It means that maybe you need to make some adjustments. It doesn't look as good. It looks super corny. And his new one, the design looks better. He's got better features. But I just loved when I saw this that, oh my gosh, he failed epically the first time. And then he came back and he broke the record on Kickstarter. So remember the cooler if your project tanks.
The coolest.
Come back. The
Your
coolest
project
cooler.
could be cooler.
Yeah, I just think that's so cool though. So,
No
pun
one.
intended. Okay, so your Kickstarter succeeds and you breathe a sigh of relief. You don't have to keep checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if you've got another backer. But now's when your real pressure's on, right? To get the actual work done. You get your monies. That happens. It goes into a big account, your Amazon account, and then you can transfer it out. And so it can be like tempting when you all of a sudden get $20,000 or $30,000 just in your account. It's in your bank account. Cool. I can go buy a car. No, don't do that. What you want to do, because it's not your money, it's your backers' money. They prepaid for a product, and you want to make sure you have enough left over in that account to cover all your costs. You want to keep your backers informed you definitely want to finish your project. That's the gimme. And just be transparent. If people are very gracious along the way. My sister is a good example. She was supposed to deliver her wallet she made like 2 months ago. And about a month ago, the manufacturer who was supposed to sew them and put them together for her kept avoiding her calls and finally called her and said, well, I sold the company and I can't do your project anymore. Well, she was already like months into this with this guy, and he was like, I can try to find some seamstresses for you to hire. It's like, oh my word. But she actually didn't get any backlash from people on Kickstarter. Everyone was really understanding because they understood that they were backing a product that wasn't made yet. And that's part of the cool thing about Kickstarter. You're getting to see the process, and you're getting to get input from people along the way. My stuff always changes as I go from input from backers who are like, that looks stupid, change it. Not quite that direct, but usually they have suggestions, they want to see things, and I'll ask for feedback and stuff. So just keep that in mind. Keep people informed. Kickstarter, so the surveys, we were talking about this earlier. I know it's a lot of information, you won't remember it all, but Kickstarter has a built-in survey process, so if someone pledges, you have to get their information. You have to get their address, you have to find out if they bought the red or the blue t-shirt, and then if you do any kind of add-on, like add $10 and I'll give you this later. Kickstarter has no way to manage that. That's all has to be done outside of Kickstarter. So that can be a big nightmare if you don't use something. So what I would encourage you to look at if you're going to do that, Backer Kit or Pledge Manager, there's other ones out there. Those allow you to do two things. One is to let people specify. It's a built-in process. The backer goes through and they can say, yeah, I added $10 and I want a t-shirt with that $10 I added. And then they can also add more products on. They can say, now I do want a t-shirt. I didn't then, but I do now. And they do it through the payment system, which the last couple of projects I've done a backer kit or a pledge manager with, it's always like $3,000 to $5,000 in extra sales after the campaign ends through a pledge management system. So those are definitely worth it. Stay organized. You definitely want to know. And then be careful of making promises to people. We get a lot of emails of people, hey, can you sign my thing? Or hey, can you do this special thing for me? And it might not seem like a big deal, but if you have like 10 or 20 of those that you've forgotten about, then that's not good. Shipping, how to not go broke, because shipping can be very expensive, both domestic but also international. A lot of times, a third of your campaign or more can be international, and so I would say, you're asking earlier if I did it myself. For the ones where they got like 800, 1,000, 1,200 packages, I don't do those myself. There's a shipping company in Portland, in Beaverton, called Print Sync, and they're amazing, and they handle everything. I send them a spreadsheet, I drop ship all my products to them, and then they just ship out everything, which is great. And it doesn't, and actually they get better bulk rates on supplies and on postage than I would on my own. So even with paying them for labor, it's cheaper for me to use them than to do it myself. And it doesn't take me, it takes me like 1 day to get on everything. And then plan for the worst, meaning pack things well, all that stuff. Follow up, keep your audience engaged. I think one thing to take away from doing a crowdsourced funding campaign is that you built an audience. Like you've got like insto audience, right? You've got like 1,000, however many it is, 500, 1,000, it could be more. You've got potentially thousands of people now on an email list who buy your stuff. They don't just like your art or like your game and say, oh, that's cool. You've got people that have actually invested money in you as an artist, as a game developer, and so they're interested in what you have to say. And so if you just like do the campaign and then let that go, well, it's shooting yourself in the foot again, because you built up an audience of people that like your stuff and will give you money for your stuff. And so keeping them engaged, doing updates when you do a new project. I was discouraged the first time I did a second project, because people were like, "No, don't spam us with your emails." Like, and then quickly other people came, and commented and said, "You know, he has a right to tell you about his new product. He liked the last one." So I haven't gotten any more complaints on that, and it's just a good way to keep that audience engaged and build the people that are going to follow you in the future. Sorry, I don't know why I wrote all this, but questions if you guys want to ask them. This is me being snarky, so go ahead.
So do you use KickTrack or KickSpy?
KickTrack, well, KickTrack's just to keep track of like during your campaign.
No, but for other campaigns, to compare which one did.
Yeah, KickTrack is a good, Kick and then TRAQ. And the owner of KickTrap is a guy named Adam who actually runs Pledge Manager also. So he's very well versed in Kickstarter. He knows a lot of people, and he's a really nice guy. But yeah, that's a good way. It'll give you like projections on your project, like where it's a high, low, where it's going to end, and it'll let you look up other people's projects and see like each day what they made, how many backers they got, all that stuff. And Kickspy is another one kind of like that. They spit out and they feature different projects as they're going.
Back on one of the slides there, you had the examples of the when you reach the stretch goals, what you provide. And I've noticed that on the campaigns that you run, when you reach stretch goals, by and large, it opens up new purchase opportunities. Like we're going to include coins now. Now you can buy the coin, but it's always something where it becomes available for purchase, but they would still need to upgrade and purchase it. Whereas like the example you showed, which I've always a little worried about. I've seen several campaigns where like they're selling a software product, and like when they reach a stretch goal, nobody pays anything more, but suddenly they ship on a different platform, or they use it, and you look at that and go, that's a little intimidating because there's no, they've reached a higher level of profitability theoretically, but they haven't actually, they're not saying it'll become available on this platform if you pay this additional amount to buy it on it. I noticed, so anyway, I noticed you stayed away from that. Is there have you seen that fail?
I try to stay away from that to some degree. I mean, because you think about if, say, your profit is, let's say it's only 10% in a Kickstarter campaign, right? Well, then you're $5,000 overfunded. You're like, wow, I've got an extra $5,000. No, you've got an extra $500. So, yeah, I do try to be careful with that. I'm sure, like when Josh did his, he ran his numbers and knew what he had to work with. And I think sometimes people also plan to put them on those platforms anyways. They just save it as a stretch goal that they can unlock. So that's kind of one thing you can do. Is things you're going to offer anyways, you just withhold it and then put it on there.
How far along, like as a game developer, would you say the guideline is to develop the game before funding the development of
the game?
The game?
That's actually a really good question. I should have put that somewhere in. So, I mean, the best thing to do would go look at successful games and what they've shown and where they're along in the development process. I know that's one of the things that really drew me to do the first couple Kickstarter campaigns is that like with the card decks, I made like 3 example cards and then I put it online with a video. And then I didn't have to take the time to make an entire illustrated card deck. I could show people a segment of it and say, this is a good representation of the project, of the product. If you like that and back that, I'll finish the rest. But I don't have the time or the funds to finish the rest right now. And so I think that same thing can apply. I mean, that's why it's great. You're not having to finish it completely before, because it's not a store, They understand this is an idea, a concept you've got. And so as much as you can show, obviously people want to see. But I think games have been funded in all levels of development on Kickstarter.
So kind of on the same vein of thought, would there be any reason, like any better, like if you had more to show, better funding, could you develop like 90% of the game and get funding for the second 90%? Would that be
So it would be 180%.
the last 10% is always going to take like...
I think it just depends on kind of where you're at with it. I probably, if you have solid art, solid gameplay to show and all that stuff, I wouldn't like saying you have to wait until it's 90% developed. I mean, did you do one for a game?
Yeah, but I think the way that, at least the way that we went into it was, we're going to show you some cool concept art, and the funding that you're going to be giving us is for the tools to make it and us to make it.
That's a good, yeah.
Because if you've got 90% of it done, they're going to be like, okay, we'll fund you 10%, which only should cost you $500.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So, no, go ahead.
Which brings me to a good segue question, which is, I see that the last, the one that you presented was like $45,000. I'm guessing you kind of played around with it and through the other Kickstarter projects, you were like, 45,000 is what I can do to make this game. Are you looking at larger scope projects in the future, or are you saying, I'd like to make X amount of these Kickstarter like games per year type of thing?
Well, the video game I showed, that wasn't my game, that was a friend's game. My stuff has been, I've kept it to smaller projects, just because I'm a one-man.
Oh, I just meant the card games.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, I've had people talk about collaborating, and that's something I've talked about. For now, just because it's something I do kind of on the side while I do work with Selma, I'm keeping it in like small projects that I can just do. But yeah, I try to do one every few months kind of a thing. And then the nice thing is I've built up enough products that I can go, like I'm going to go to Lego City Comic Con and have a table there and sell and that kind of thing. So
Because what I was thinking was, you know, if you want, like, if I wanted to make my career as a, you know, a card game, you know,
Right.
card games, I'd look at it like maybe I can do 5 of these in a year to have a career, you know, to keep doing it,
yeah.
you know.
I'm not trying to live solely off it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that would be cool, but there's just not enough really like money in it, and it's a lot of work. But I could. The problem for me too, that's something I don't plan for very well, is distribution after the fact. I sell them on my website, or I sell them usually in wholesale bulk to retailers. That's where I make money afterwards. But because my minimums are so high, 2,500 decks at a time, I don't have an extra 10 grand to do a reprint. So when they're kind of gone, they're gone to some degree.
Okay, so what is the cost of bicycles charging now?
They're $292 per deck for the basic bicycle deck. If you want anything like embossing or foil or anything special, it can go up to like $10 a deck.
So do they print them also?
They do everything. They print, do the box, do the packaging, and then they should ship you all your decks. Go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of reply to people asking where they should be at with their games. From what I've seen, it also kind of depends. If you've never finished and published a video game before, you might want to be farther along, because what I've seen is a lot of anywhere from students to indies that will get theirs funded, and then 2 years later they're still not finished, and then you're just going to have backers complaining like nonstop. And in some cases they couldn't finish it. So if you finished one before, people are more likely to back you. I won't back one unless they either have a game already published or they're almost done, or they're at like a finishing point. Because otherwise, I don't have.
You don't want to wait like a year for your.
Yeah, I don't have any real trust that they're not going to get to where they're 90% done and then stop making it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that does happen. Sometimes people run out of money or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's something called an estimated delivery date on all your rewards. So you do yourself a favor if you like overestimate that out in the future longer than you think it'll really take you. Is that what
Nobody complains, but it's too early.
What?
Nobody complains, oh,
Yeah,
it's too
exactly.
early.
No one's gonna be like, oh, you delivered early. What's the deal? I was expecting to wait 6 more months. Any other questions? Yep.
Is there any way that I could get a copy of your PowerPoint?
Yeah. I don't know if they're put it on the Cgdc site or something, or
Yeah.
can you export these things as PDFs?
Your Google Docs, yeah.
If I had internet
Yeah,
connection.
do you have to accept that window that she closed?
I closed the window. Yeah, I can make it available to whoever wants it.
And one question for you about the art side of things.
Uh-huh.
You may have to accept on that.
I'll accept your proposal. Internet.
Are you doing your artwork digitally or both?
I do mostly digitally. Sometimes I'll do sketches on paper, but
Illustrator or Photoshop, or,
Photoshop.
and you're using Cintiq or
I have
tablet?
I have a Cintiq, a 13-inch one.
My daughter is getting into art, going that direction. We have
Oh, yeah?
Cintiq also. But,
Yeah, those are awesome.
so just, I'm looking at this, thinking about this idea of the card idea, maybe for her, because we're trying to, she's 18 now, we're trying to get her
Oh, nice.
to find some way to fund her.
Right,
career,
yeah.
and this is an awesome idea.
Yeah, the cards are, I kind of got it at a good time because there weren't a lot of people doing those. There's only like 1 or 2 other companies doing it, people doing it.
Right.
Now it's very saturated. There's so many card deck creators on there. And the reason, I think one of the only reasons I'm able to keep doing them is because I have established a fan base. And so they always come back and I keep doing it. But there was a point where I switched from steampunk to like the elves and orcs fantasy thing, and I lost a bunch of people on that campaign because it was like, I switched genres, I think, and so all that stuff you have to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, it's still a good thing to do, and if that, or even people do art prints or all sorts of things. You can find anything, anything now. Really. Anybody else? Questions?
Can you pull one more thing on there? Are you still on? Yeah. Kickstarter?
I am. What am I pulling up?
We like to Kickstarter. Brock Henderson, who couldn't make it here, his friend in California's Kickstarter, the Bible. Biblioteca, Bibliotheca.
Oh, that's his?
Yeah.
That's a really neat
They
product.
just did $1 million for a Bible.
It's a really pretty Bible set. It is. I don't know if I spelled
So
that.
that could be a new trend, guys.
Yes.
Bibles. Maybe I'll just-
No, that didn't work. Okay. It was bringing up Biblioteca like that.
The beard Bible's kind of nice too, though. So T-H-E.
TH. Oh gosh. Bibliotech. Like that? Is
T-H-E-C-A.
that right?
Yeah.
T-H-E-C-A. Bibliothèque.
Biblioteca.
Okay.
Like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
T-H-E-C-A.
Just search in Google for it.
There
Yes. If I could only spell.
Look at that.
Oh, 45 hours of film.
It's great.
Why?
These are really nice.
What is it supposed to be?
It's not an epic failure.
Yeah.
good?
That's the set right there.
You have to recline on a couch and wear a sweater while reading it. Or else you don't. Yeah, these are really neat, and they're written without verses or
It's brilliant.
markers, chapter markers, so you just read it like a book. It's very cool.
And he used the open source American Standard version, so you don't have to pay for a licensing fee or anything like that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool wood box.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So hip. The Bible's cool again. Oh, yeah. I would totally read that.
It's only got 45 hours to go. You're gonna have to pledge soon.
You're gonna feel so much cooler in the coffee shop reading this than your giant NIV student study Bible. You would look.
Other Max
I
Lucado.
think I'd rather bet Jeff Spicer.
He's trending towards $1,000.
Is he?
According to Kick
Track.
He made his.
Look it up.
Yeah, I might as well do it, yeah.
I'm probably spelling his name wrong.
Yeah.
$66. Oh yeah.
Funded.
Maybe he's funded. He failed.
He failed to fail it. Therefore,
It's hurting my
Is it
brain.
though?
It's not a time travel.
I don't.
Did he succeed or did he fail?
He succeeded at update number 2.
Yeah.
Now I would be.
President.
Well, is that the $1,000 still?
I want a pillowcase.
Good job, man.
That's my password.
Yes. Now we all know where he lives.
Richfield.
By the way, Domino's just delivered there.
Tell the world about it.
He tries to deliver a sandwich in
So
there.
what's
I told Chris to make me a sandwich in a meeting, like on Skype, and then he put it as a task item in base camp. And then I was in Tualatin at my brother's office, and Domino's delivered a sandwich to him. How Chris makes a sandwich. Yeah, it's great. I'll check it out.
Like crazy now.
And you got a comment. It's trending up to 3.
And you might
He
even
is
get
like
the $2
making
negative
bank.
incentive.
That's
Your
like-
$2 distance.
Almost pure profit.
Play the video.
I don't know if it'll play on the internet. Seems not great.
Hi,
Oh, here we
my
go.
name
Earlier.
is Jeff, and I need your help to fail epically at Kickstarter. There is a saying that goes, the only way to truly fail is not to try.
Okay, it's gonna be painful to
Yeah.
watch. Jeff does not have a stutter. Bad internet connection.
You had just a remarkably good beer in that video.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to
That's
lag.
nice.
You know, I'm waiting for somebody to auto-tune that. So maybe we should do that as part of the contest, if somebody needs to auto-tune Jeff.
That could be a start.
Kona Coffee, that would be worth Kona Coffee right there, yes, auto-tune Jeff.
I actually could probably take it and make him sound like a robot.
He said,
Well, dude, he-
all those should be.
I can, I can.
Come back, stay drum, that could be another pledge reward.
I can see about ripping off the,
Cool.
audio and.
All right, if there's not any more questions, I think.
I believe.
He didn't start. I hope you all had a good time.
You did a good job.